What's happening, fight fans? There is nothing in boxing quite like a knockout artist. And in the world today, there are none more devastating and consistent than Artur Beterbiev. With a perfect 100% knockout ratio in 20 fights, Beterbiev is the only world champion to knock out everyone he's ever faced.
The most dangerous puncher in the game is ready to close the show. This is over.
Artur Beterbiev, he is a wrecker of bodies and a stealer of souls.
I don't see anybody beating this guy.
I'm Dan Morley, a professional welterweight boxer, and I'm going to break down for you why Artur Beterbiev is the most feared fighter on the planet today. Although he's only started picking up mainstream attention in the last few years, Beterbiev has actually been stopping top-level operators since 2014 when he blasted away Tavoris Cloud in 2 rounds. And although it's his demolition streak since that we're going to focus on in this video mainly, I just want to take you back to his phenomenal amateur career first. Beterbiev was an elite amateur, and this translates over to his professional style, compiling an amateur record of 295 wins to just 5 defeats. Beterbiev defeated many of the top amateurs of his time, including some pros that have gone on to have pretty legendary careers. Most notably, 2-division undisputed champion Alexander Usyk, even dropping the Ukrainian with a body shot. He also beat the light heavyweight king Sergey Kovalev, another knockout machine. And this phenomenal amateur pedigree has translated to his pro style and seen him absolutely demolish those he's faced at light heavyweight, including Alexander Vosdik, Callum Smith, Joe Smith Jr. and many others. Whilst a mouth-watering pound-for-pound clash against Dmitry Bivol awaits, no one so far has been able to last the distance with Beterbiev. I've identified the following things which separates Artur Beterbiev from other knockout artists in the world today. Well, firstly, there's his otherworldly power. With a 100% knockout ratio, this speaks for himself. If he watches knockouts, he barely even seems to touch his opposition whilst blasting them away. And this in itself makes everything else he does that little bit easier, because his opposition know that he can turn their lights out at any time. But one of the main things that makes him elite is his clinical pressure. Beterbiev is constantly walking his opposition down. He's usually the stronger of the two, and he physically imposes himself over his opposition. But this clinical pressure is both physical and psychological. Whilst marching his opponents down, Beterbiev is always balanced and ever so slightly out of range, but able to pounce in and do his damage. And of course, you can't just walk into your opponents and land big shots. Beterbiev uses his battering ram jab to push his opposition back. This in turn pushes them into tight spaces and creates his opportunity to throw shots. But it's a little more complex than that, because he also hooks off the jab as well, which shocks his opposition and again closes the distance. Once Beterbiev gets you where he wants you, there's nowhere to hide, and once he starts unleashing his shots, you have no choice but to cover up temporarily. From my own experience, this kind of pressure against a big puncher is so suffocating. But on a technical level, he wastes absolutely nothing. He's so clinical with his shots and changes the levels perfectly, so you never know where they're coming from. He's also powerful enough to punch through your guard, whilst even though you're protected, still causes damage. What makes his shots a little more awkward and unconventional is at times he throws them from extremely loopy angles, which sometimes catch around the back of the guard, being harder to defend and causing more damage because the opponent doesn't expect him to come from this angle. And whilst covering up won't keep you safe, clinching doesn't do much better either, because he's not afraid to rough you up and uses extreme strength up close. And even though his record suggests he might be unbeatable, we have seen opponents push him back. But in these rare instances, his toughness, grit, and his relentless cardio has always got him through.
Oh, Johnson goes down a right hand. That was just a grazing right hand.
But what weaknesses does this seemingly indestructible knockout artist have? Well, for starters, we use the Anthony Yarde fight. He hasn't got a great deal of head movement, although he is good with his feet at getting in and out of range. Sometimes his head stays on the centre line, and if you do back him up, you can land a clean shot. And we've seen multiple opponents drop him, although in all of these occasions, he has got up to secure a knockout.
Cage just does not look stable in there right now. Down he goes again, and that will be it.
But time waits for no man. Pushing nearly 40 years of age with over 300 fights as an amateur and pro, with multiple of his recent fights being delayed due to injuries. However, he's always turned up in those fights looking 100% and securing a knockout. The big one awaits next against Dmitry Bivol in the most intriguing fight in boxing, in my opinion. And that's why I think over the last decade, Artur Beterbiev has been such a devastating knockout artist. Let me know in the comments who you want to see me break down next in this series.